On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was named Chancellor of Germany, the most powerful position in the German government. It was hoped that Hitler could lead the nation out of its grave political and economic crisis. Hitler was the leader of the right-wing National Socialist German Workers' Party, called the Nazi Party for short. Once in power, Hitler suspended individual freedoms of press, speech, and assembly using special forces like the Gestapo and the SS. Hitler became like a dictator. Hitler and the Nazis also began to put in their practice their racial ideology. The Nazis believed that the Germans were racially superior. They saw the Jews and other groups, like the Roma, as inferior. In 1933, new German laws enforced Jews out of many jobs.
A decree by the government that all Jews, male and female, had to adopt a Jewish name. And you had to add your middle name to your name, a middle name. All women became Sarah and all men became Israel.
In April 1933, the Nuremberg Laws made Jews second-class citizens.
They also, at the same time, a law took effect that did not allow a Jewish person, male or female, to go with a Gentile person, male or female.
Between 1937 and 1939, more anti-Jewish laws were passed, making life in Germany for Jewish people very difficult. Then, in November 1938, the Nazis organized a riot known as Kristallnacht, the Night of the Broken Glass. They attacked Jewish-owned stores and synagogues. About 91 Jews were killed during the 2 days of rioting. After Kristallnacht, many Jews were rounded up and put into concentration camps as a way to scare them into leaving Germany. Clark Blattis said, "It was while my father was in the concentration camp that my mother began to work to get us out of the country." Many Jewish people immigrated at this time. One of the groups that immigrated did so on the SS St. Louis. Getting out of Germany required that people have a visa giving them permission to enter another country and to leave Germany. The passengers on the SS St. Louis had visas for Cuba. Cuba was welcoming refugees at that time. Passengers planned to go to Cuba, and then most were hoping their numbers would come up on the Bureau of Immigration and Naturalization quota list for the United States of America. While most of the visas were real, some were not official. They knew that waiting might take some time because in 1921 and 1924, the U.S. Congress passed immigration laws that severely limited the number and national origin of new immigrants. These laws had not changed as Jewish refugees in Nazi Germany were looking to escape. The SS St. Louis under Captain Gustav Schroeder triumphantly departed from Hamburg, Germany on May 13, 1939 for Havana, Cuba. 937 passengers were on board. 231 crew members were also on board. Captain Schroeder removed the large picture of Hitler from the dining room in order to make the passengers feel more comfortable. This was one of the many things he did that showed his passengers he was on their side. The voyage was supposed to take 2 weeks. On board, the passengers were feeling hopeful after their terrible experiences in Germany. There was a dance band and a cinema. Passengers could use the swimming pool and relax. There was plenty of food, which had not been the case in Germany. The waiters and crew members were ordered by the captain to be polite to the passengers, another signal from the captain that he was on their side. He allowed the Jews to practice their religion. While the Jews were having a relaxing and fun trip looking forward to freedom, they knew that if they returned, they would die. During the 2 weeks the ship was sailing, there had been some changes in how refugees were handled in Cuba. Only Jews with an American visa would be accepted in Cuba. This was a surprise to the captain and the passengers. 35 passengers had the right visas and were allowed into Cuba. There were negotiations on behalf of the Jewish passengers, and the ship waited in the harbor to hear the results. Knowing they were not going to be given refuge, the ship left Cuba on June 1, 1939. The passengers were discouraged and frightened about the future. The ship did not immediately head back to Europe. It traveled slowly up the coast of the United States and Canada, hoping the governments of these countries would allow them refuge. They anchored off Florida, hoping for word to come that they could enter the United States. They had to anchor far offshore so that no one would attempt to jump off the ship and swim to shore. Some passengers on the SS St. Louis cabled President Franklin D. Roosevelt asking for refuge. Friends of the refugees also argued for letting them in. Roosevelt never responded. The State Department and the White House had decided not to permit the refugees to enter the United States. A State Department telegram sent to a passenger stated that the passengers must await their turns on the waiting list and qualify for obtaining immigration visas before they may be admissible into the United States. The Great Depression had left millions of people in the United States unemployed and fearful of competition for the few jobs available. It also fueled anti-Semitism. A Fortune magazine poll at the time indicated that 83% of the Americans opposed relaxing restrictions on immigration. President Roosevelt could have issued an executive order to admit the SS St. Louis refugees, but this general hostility to immigrants caused them not to allow it. Because the United States had denied entrance, they sailed up the coast to Halifax, Canada. Canada also denied entrance to the refugees. The Prime Minister of Canada, William Lyon Mackenzie King, asked several members of his government for advice about the refugees. Frederick Blair, the director of the Government of Canada's immigration branch, said, "No country could open its doors wide enough to take in hundreds of thousands of Jewish people who want to leave Europe. The line must be drawn somewhere." The SS St. Louis resumed its journey and tragically headed towards Europe. On June 17, 1939, the ship docked in Antwerp, Belgium, and the passengers disembarked and dispersed from there. 214 stayed in Belgium, 224 went to France, 181 went to the Netherlands, and 288 went to the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, as the war came across the European continent, the Germans conquered many of these countries, and most were eventually put into concentration camps. 254 of the passengers were ultimately murdered by the Nazis. In the aftermath of the denial of refuge for the passengers, Hitler used the responses of the other countries to show that no one wanted the Jews. This was a propaganda tool for him. This empowered him to begin large-scale murder of the Jews. In the end, over 6 million men, women, and children are victims of genocide. The United States helped set up the Intergovernmental Committee on Refugees to figure out what to do with the refugees, but the U.S. didn't feel they had an obligation to take in the Jews. No other country did either. After the war and what had been done to the Jews was discovered, countries realized that it was important to help refugees. The United Nations set up an office of the High Commissioner for Refugees in 1950, and the Refugee Convention was passed the next year. After World War II, the U.S. believed it had a moral obligation to help people fleeing persecution. When the Nazis came into power in 1933, no one could predict how their hatred of Jews would have resulted in genocide. The laws and policies they made devalued them as citizens and were intended to force them to leave Germany. Many Jews in Germany immigrated to escape. One group of 937 Jews were able to escape on the SS St. Louis to Cuba, but no country would let them in. They ended up back in Europe in the clutches of the Nazis. In the end, countries recognized that it was important to help refugees. Today, what to do with the refugees is still an important global conversation to have.